I'm not done yet. Those four words belong to Carlos Soria, an 80-year-old Spanish mountaineer who refuses to let go of one of the deadliest goals in the climbing world, the summit of K2. Most climbers retire in their 40s. I-50, they tell stories instead of making them. But Carlos, he's still packing for expeditions, still sleeping in base camp tents, still staring up at the savage mountain with the same hunger he had decades ago. K2 is not Everest. It's steeper, colder, and deadlier. Nearly 1 in 4 who attempt it never come back. And yet, Carlos has returned to its slopes multiple times, each attempt to duel with weather, altitude, and time itself. In this video, we dive into the remarkable journey of a man who has summited 12 of the world's 14 highest peaks, all after the age of 50, but still hasn't conquered the one mountain that seems determined to keep him at bay. What keeps him going? Is it ambition, obsession, or something deeper? This is the story of Carlos Soria, the 80-year-old who refuses to stop chasing K2. Carlos Soria was born in 1939 in Avila, Spain, a small medieval city surrounded by rolling hills, far from the towering peaks of the Himalayas. His love for climbing began in his teens, but unlike most elite alpinists, he didn't dedicate his youth to chasing records. He worked as an upholsterer, raised a family, and climbed in his free time. It wasn't until his late 40s that Soria began seriously pursuing high-altitude mountaineering, and that's where his story becomes extraordinary. While most climbers slow down after 40, Carlos was just getting started. By the time he reached his 70s, he had summited 12 of the world's 14 mountains over 8,000 meters, many of them on his first attempt. This includes giants like Annapurna, Makalu, and Dhaulagiri, often considered some of the most dangerous in the world. What makes his feats even more remarkable is that he achieved them without the huge sponsorship deals or fanfare given to younger climbers. His expeditions have been defined by meticulous preparation, patience, and an ability to listen to his body, skills that come with age and experience. Yet, one peak has consistently eluded him, K2. He's attempted it multiple times, each time forced back by weather, avalanches, or shifting ice. For Carlos, K2 isn't just another mountain, it's the final chapter in a career defined by persistence. And at 80 years old, while most people his age are settling into quiet routines, Carlos Soria is still lacing up his boots, shouldering a pack, and heading back into the thin air. Because for him, the mountain will never truly be out of reach until he stands on its summit. K2 rises 8,611 meters above sea level, straddling the border of Pakistan and China. It's known as the Savage Mountain, a title it's earned through a combination of brutal weather, technical climbing, and a fatality rate nearly double that of Everest. Like Everest's gradual slopes, K2 offers no easy sections. From the first step out of base camp, climbers are met with rock, ice, and steep faces that demand skill, precision, and a tolerance for danger. Its most infamous section, the bottleneck, lies above 8,200 meters, under hanging seracs that can collapse without warning, turning the summit push into a race against time and fate. Carlos Soria first faced K2 in 2001. Back then, he was already in his early 60s, an age when most high-altitude climbers have retired. The mountain greeted him with high winds and unstable snowpack. He turned back before the summit. Over the years, he's returned each time armed with more experience, more preparation, and the same quiet determination. Yet K2 has always had the last word. Avalanches, storms, and rockfall have sent him home without a summit photo. For Carlos, K2 has become more than just a climb. It's a personal conversation with the mountain, a test of patience, resilience, and humility. In interviews, he often says, K2 is not Everest. Here, the mountain decides. Why keep coming back? For him, it's not about records, though he would become the oldest person to summit K2 if successful. It's about finishing what he started, proving that age is not a barrier to passion, and showing that careful, calculated persistence can match the strength of youth. Every failed attempt has reinforced one truth: K2 demands respect, and it will only allow a summit when every element aligns: weather, health, and timing. Until then, Carlos is willing to wait and try again, because for him, turning back doesn't mean giving up, it just means the story isn't over yet. Climbing K2 in your 20s is a monumental challenge. Attempting it at 80 borders on the unimaginable. And yet, Carlos Soria's preparation is proof that age can be met head-on with discipline, science, and sheer willpower. Soria's training is relentless but smart. Gone are the days of reckless overexertion. Instead, he focuses on strength, endurance, and recovery. His mornings often start with cycling long road rides to keep his cardiovascular system efficient. Strength sessions target his legs and core, the engines for climbing steep, uneven terrain. Flexibility and balance exercises help prevent the missteps that can be fatal at altitude. But physical fitness is only part of the equation. At his age, regular medical checkups are as critical as rope checks. Soria works closely with sports physicians to monitor heart health, oxygen saturation, and muscular recovery times. He tailors his training to ensure that every step he takes above 7,000 meters is sustainable. Altitude acclimatization is another key factor. In the months leading up to an expedition, Carlos trains and climbs in the Sierra de Guadarrama near Madrid, then heads to higher ranges like the Alps or the Andes to condition his body to low oxygen environments. Perhaps most impressively, his recovery routines rival those of professional athletes decades younger. Ice baths, massage therapy, and strict sleep schedules keep his body from breaking down during grueling expeditions. His diet is equally disciplined: lean proteins, anti-inflammatory foods, and hydration strategies to combat the dehydration that's common at high altitude. But beyond the numbers and routines, Soria's mindset is his greatest weapon. At 80, he approaches training with the humility of a beginner and the wisdom of a veteran. He understands his limits, but he also knows how to stretch them carefully, deliberately. This combination of preparation and perspective means that when Carlos Soria steps onto the slopes of K2, he isn't chasing a fantasy. He's executing a plan, one that's been years, even decades, in the making, and in the death zone, that difference can mean everything. By 2021, Carlos Soria was no stranger to disappointment on K2. Each failed attempt had taught him more about the mountain's moods. But that summer, he believed conditions might finally align. The pandemic had delayed many expeditions, and base camp was less crowded than in previous years. For Soria, that was a good sign. Fewer climbers meant fewer bottlenecks on dangerous sections like the Bottleneck and the Black Pyramid. His team arrived well acclimatized, having spent weeks at progressively higher camps. But K2 has a way of humbling even the most prepared. Days before the summit push, an unexpected storm swept in. High winds shredded tents at Camp 3, and heavy snowfall buried fixed ropes. Soria and his team waited at base camp, hoping for a break in the weather. When the window finally came, it was too short, just 24 hours of calm before another storm. For a younger climber, a high-speed dash to the top might have been possible. For Soria, whose strategy relies on steady pacing, the risk was unacceptable. He turned back. In 2022, he returned yet again. The mountain greeted him with blue skies at first, lifting hopes across base camp. The route was in good condition, and his acclimatization was on schedule. But at higher camps, the air grew restless. Forecasts predicted jet stream winds dropping onto the summit ridge, a deadly scenario where gusts can knock climbers off the mountain entirely. Soria reached Camp 3, weighed his options, and made the call. Descend, another no summit, another lesson. To outsiders, these back-to-back retreats might look like failures. But in high-altitude climbing, turning back can be the most difficult and courageous choice. Soria's rule has always been the same: I climb to live, not to die. Each attempt was not just another try, it was another year of proving that determination is not blind stubbornness. And if K2 allows it, he'll be back again. Because for Carlos Soria, the mountain isn't just a goal, it's a lifelong conversation. At 8,000 meters, your body screams for oxygen, your muscles beg for rest, and your mind is caught between ambition and survival. For Carlos Soria, mastering that mental battlefield is as critical as any physical preparation. Unlike younger climbers driven by records or recognition, Soria's motivation is deeply personal. He isn't chasing fame, he's chasing a promise to himself to live life without leaving important dreams unfinished. He talks openly about fear, not as a weakness, but as a vital tool. Fear keeps you alive, he says. It forces him to assess conditions with brutal honesty, to listen to his instincts, and to reject the dangerous, ego-driven push that has claimed so many lives on K2. Patience is another cornerstone of his mental game. Many climbers rush summit attempts the moment a weather window appears. Soria, in contrast, is willing to wait days, sometimes weeks, for the right moment, knowing that the mountain will always be stronger than any human will. And then there's acceptance. Soria understands that he may never stand on K2's summit, but that acceptance doesn't weaken his drive, it sharpens it. He climbs not to beat the mountain, but to meet it on its own terms. For him, the summit is only part of the journey. The real victory is returning home, alive and ready to climb again. It's the clarity, the ability to separate desire from recklessness that keeps him in the game, year after year, even as the odds grow steeper. On K2, strength may get you high, but it's the mind that brings you back. Carlos Soria's legacy reaches far beyond the peaks he summited. In a sport often defined by speed records and young prodigies, he has rewritten the narrative of what's possible later in life. When he climbed Annapurna at 77, he became the oldest person to summit one of the world's most dangerous 8,000 Ers. When he topped Alagiri at 79, he pushed the limits even further. But it's not the records themselves that inspire climbers, it's the way he achieves them, methodically, humbly, and without ever compromising safety for glory. Soria's philosophy has resonated deeply within the climbing community. He advocates for responsible ambition, the belief that a mountaineer's first duty is to come back alive, no matter the cost to their ego. In an era where social media often glorifies risky behavior for views, his voice is a counterweight, reminding us that survival is the greatest summit. What drives him? Part of it is unfinished business. K2 remains the only unconquered 8,000-meter peak on his list. But there's also a deeper pull, a lifelong connection to the mountains as places of truth. High altitude strips life to its essentials. Every step, every breath is earned. There's no pretending. Soria has said that mountaineering has given him more than just adventure, it's given him discipline, resilience, and an unshakable respect for nature's power. And perhaps that's why, even as he nears his ninth decade, he's still drawn to the thin, cold air. In the eyes of younger climbers, Carlos is proof that age is not an expiration date, it's an advantage if paired with wisdom and patience. For many, he's become a mentor, not by teaching technique, but by showing what it means to have purpose. Whether or not he ever stands on K2's summit, Carlos Soria's story is already complete in one sense. He's shown that the climb is never just about the top, it's about who you become on the way there. Carlos Soria may or may not ever stand on K2's summit, and he knows it, but that's not what defines him. For him, the act of returning to the savage mountain again and again isn't about proving he can beat it. It's about showing that dreams have no expiration date, and that courage isn't measured in meters climbed, but in the will to keep moving forward. In a world that constantly tells us to slow down, to settle, to accept our limits, Carlos Soria chooses the opposite. At 80, he is still shouldering his pack, stepping into crampons, and walking toward a goal most would have abandoned decades earlier. And maybe that's the real summit, refusing to let the mountain or the years decide when your journey ends. Carlos Soria's story isn't just about age or endurance. It's about passion lived fully, risk faced honestly, and a dream pursued without apology. Because in the end, the lesson from K2 is simple. The mountain doesn't care how old you are. It only cares how much you're willing to give. And Carlos, he's still giving everything.